Welcome to my channel, everyone. In today's video, we're going to be installing some front-end skid plates on my third generation Toyota Tacoma. These skid plates include the Trd Pro Skid Plate and the Runnin4Tacos lower control arm skid plates. Alright, so here's the OEM Trd Pro Skid Plate that we'll be installing today. This skid plate does include the necessary bolts that you need to install it onto the Tacoma. And also, I believe in order to do the installation today, all we're going to need is a 12mm socket, a 17mm socket, and a ratchet, or in my case I'm going to use the impact driver. It should be pretty straightforward, but the first step we need to do is go ahead and remove the old skid plate from the vehicle in order to make way for the new skid plate. Alright, so in order to remove the old skid plate, you're going to have 4 12mm bolts. You're going to have 2 in the front right here. There's one right here, one right here, and then you're also going to have 2 in the back. One over here and one right there. So let me go ahead and remove the old skid plate and then we'll install the new one. Now, one thing to mention, when you remove the old skid plate, it's going to have these hooks right here. That'll just allow it to fall down but stay in place, and you'll just take it off of the hooks after you're done unbolting it. And as you can see, it's now just hanging in place. Just go ahead and remove it off of the hooks, and we are good to go. Alright, with the Trd Pro Skid Plate, you're going to have these 17mm bolts right here and over here. One of the great things about this skid plate is it has an access panel for your oil filter. Anytime you need to do an oil change, you don't have to remove the skid plate. You just open up the access panel, you have access to your oil filter that way. At the end right here, you're going to have some 12mm bolts that go in the back. Now, in order to install the skid plate, you may have to remove some of the factory bolts that are underneath the vehicle. So let me go and show you where those are so we can get those removed and install the new skid plate. Alright, so as far as the factory bolts are concerned that you'll need to remove, it looks like you'll need to remove one of these bolts up here, this bolt right here, and then back here you're going to have 2 bolts. You want to remove the one that's further back towards the rear of the vehicle on each side. You'll have one over there as well, and then you should have the 12mm bolts on the back end of the skid plate that bolt up right over here to the subframe. I know it's a little hard to see, but there should be some threaded holes for those bolts to go into. Alright, now that the bolts are out, we can go ahead and line up the Trd Pro Skid Plate and start hand threading the bolts into place. And which point, once all of the bolts are hand threaded, then we can go ahead and go back and tighten them up with a ratchet or an impact driver. Alright, so now that the bolts are started by hand, I can go ahead and thread them all the way in and tighten everything up. One thing to mention is, first off, it is very heavy, so it's really hard to do by yourself laying on the ground, and this job would go a lot quicker and a lot more smoothly if I had a lift to use, but obviously I don't at home, so here we are. Again, I'm only using a 17mm socket and a 12mm socket to install this skid plate, so let's go ahead and tighten it up. Alright, so here's everything that you're going to need to install these lower control arm skid plates on your Tacoma. And as far as the tools are concerned, we're going to have, let's see here, we have an 11mm wrench, a 14mm wrench just in case. Then we have our 14mm socket and a 3/8 ratchet. And as far as the skid plates are concerned, the hardware that's included are some carriage bolts. You got a long version and a shorter version, and then you'll have some smaller bolts that go towards the front of the control arm. And in order to install the skid plate onto the lower control arm, what you need to do is put the longer bolt on the back side. You'll notice that the back side does not have a logo cut out. This is the backside right here. The logo is for the front, to face the front of the vehicle. You'll put the longer carriage bolt through the backside of the skid plate, at which point then you'll put your spacer on. Then you'll put the bolt through the lower control arm. And on the other end, on top of the control arm, you'll add your washer and your nylon nut. The shorter bolt will go towards the front of the control arm, and then for the front of the control arm you'll use the small bolt, where you'll put the small washer on first, then you'll stick it through the skid plate, and then you'll put it through the control arm, and then you'll use the bigger washer and the nylon nut on top of the control arm. Let's go ahead and put these guys on and see how they look. Alright guys, that's going to do it for this video. If you have any questions, make sure to leave them in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe, as 2021 will hopefully be the year of 1,000 subscribers. And in the meantime, I'll see you guys in the next video. Later.